March 9, 1974, Philippine jungle. A search party finds a man living in a cave, surviving on coconuts and stolen rice. He's wearing a tattered Imperial Japanese Army uniform. He's carrying a rifle, and he refuses to believe World War II is over. Hiroo Onoda had been ordered to hold his position until relieved by his commanding officer. That order was given in 1944. For 29 years, he followed it, conducting guerrilla operations, evading capture, and maintaining his post while the world moved on without him. His surrender made international headlines. But the real story isn't about the soldier who wouldn't give up. It's about what happens when loyalty becomes indistinguishable from madness. This is the story of the last Japanese soldier to surrender from World War II, 3 decades after everyone else went home. Number WWII, number Japan, number true story, number survival, number documentary, number history, number World War II. Script, 10,892 characters. December 26, 1944. Lubang Island, Philippines. Second Lieutenant Hiroo Onoda of the Imperial Japanese Army Intelligence Division received his final orders from Major Yoshimi Taniguchi, his commanding officer. You are absolutely forbidden to die by your own hand. It may take 3 years. It may take 5, but whatever happens will come back for you. Until then, as long as you have one soldier, you are to continue to lead him. You may have to live on coconuts. If that's the case, live on coconuts. Under no circumstances are you to give up your life voluntarily. Onoda saluted. Understood, sir. He would follow those orders for the next 10,620 days. The strategic situation on Lubang was hopeless. American forces were advancing through the Philippines, retaking island after island. Japanese garrisons were being systematically destroyed or forced to surrender. Everyone knew the war was ending. Everyone except the men who'd been ordered to never surrender. Onoda's mission was guerrilla warfare and intelligence gathering. With a small team of soldiers, he was to disrupt American operations, gather information, and maintain Japanese resistance on Lubang until reinforcements arrived. Those reinforcements would never come. By March 1945, American and Filipino forces had retaken Lubang. Japanese resistance collapsed in a matter of days. Hundreds of soldiers surrendered. But Onoda and 3 other men, Private Yuichi Akatsu, Corporal Shoichi Shimada, and Private First Class Kinshichi Kozuka, retreated into the jungle. They would not emerge for decades. The first years were the hardest. Onoda's group survived on stolen rice, bananas, coconuts, and whatever wildlife they could hunt. They moved camp constantly, never staying in one location more than a few days. They conducted reconnaissance patrols, observing the American occupiers and waiting for Japanese forces to return. They genuinely believed the war was still being fought. When American planes dropped leaflets in October 1945 announcing Japan's surrender, Onoda dismissed them as propaganda. Obviously a trick to make us give up, he told his men. The emperor would never surrender. This is psychological warfare. When the leaflet showed photographs of Japanese officials signing surrender documents aboard the USS Missouri, Onoda studied them carefully through his binoculars. Forgeries. Look at the signatures. They're clearly not authentic. The Americans must have forced prisoners to pose for these photographs. His men wanted to believe him. The alternative, that the war was over and they were hiding in the jungle for nothing, was too painful to accept. So they didn't accept it. The Philippine government tried multiple approaches to draw them out. Loudspeaker broadcasts, more leaflets. Even family members were brought to Lubang to record messages begging the holdouts to surrender. In 1950, Onoda heard his brother's voice echoing through the jungle from a loudspeaker. Hiroo, the war is over. Japan surrendered in 1945. Please come home. Mother is waiting for you. Onoda listened carefully, analyzing the voice for signs of coercion. They've tortured him to make him say this, he concluded. The intonation is wrong. He's reading from a script under duress. The other three men weren't so sure. Private Akatsu, the youngest, had been growing increasingly doubtful. In September 1949, after 4 years in the jungle, he'd had enough. While the others slept, he slipped away and surrendered to Filipino police. His interrogation provided valuable intelligence about the remaining holdouts' location, tactics, and mental state. When asked why he'd stayed so long, Akatsu answered simply, "Lieutenant Onoda wouldn't let us leave." The Philippine military launched search operations. Leaflets bearing Akatsu's photograph and testimony were dropped throughout Lubang. I have surrendered and been treated well. The war is truly over. Please come home. Onoda studied the leaflets. Akatsu was always weak. They broke him with torture and forced him to write this. We will not make the same mistake. Now there were three. Through the 1950s, Onoda, Shimada, and Kozuka maintained their guerrilla campaign. They stole food from farms, burned rice stores to deny resources to the enemy, and occasionally exchanged fire with Filipino police who attempted to capture them. People died. In 1954, Shimada was shot and killed by search party members after opening fire on them. The incident made national news in both the Philippines and Japan. Surely now, authorities thought, the remaining two would realize the war was over. Onoda examined Shimada's death from a tactical perspective. He was careless. He allowed the enemy to flank his position. We must be more vigilant. Now there were two. The 1960s brought modernization to Lubang. Electricity reached the island. Televisions appeared in villages. Tourists began visiting. The world was changing around them. Onoda and Kozuka watched from the jungle, interpreting everything through the lens of their 1944 orders. The Americans are consolidating their occupation, Onoda explained. They're building infrastructure to support long-term military presence. This confirms the war continues. In 1972, Kozuka was shot and killed by police during a raid on a rice storage facility. Now Onoda was alone. He was 48 years old. He'd spent more than half his life following orders that no longer made sense to anyone but him. He'd lost all 3 of his men. He'd killed approximately 30 Filipinos and wounded over 100 during his decades-long guerrilla campaign. And he still believed he was fighting World War II. The Japanese government, embarrassed by the ongoing situation, intensified efforts to locate him. Search parties combed Lubang. Leaflets dropped from aircraft included photographs of modern Japan, skyscrapers, bullet trains, the 1964 Tokyo Olympics. Onoda collected them and analyzed them like intelligence reports. Sophisticated propaganda, he noted in his diary. The Americans have obviously forced Japanese cooperation in creating these images. The technology shown is clearly beyond what Japan could develop in just 20 years. These are fabrications designed to demoralize us. Then, in February 1974, something unexpected happened. A young Japanese man named Norio Suzuki arrived on Lubang. He wasn't military. He wasn't part of a search party. He was a college dropout and adventurer who told friends he wanted to find a panda, the abominable snowman, and Lieutenant Onoda, in that order. He had no training, no official backing, and no plan beyond wander around the jungle until I find him. It worked. On February 20th, Suzuki encountered Onoda at his camp. Instead of fleeing or hiding, Onoda, curious about this obvious civilian, revealed himself. "Who are you?" Onoda demanded, rifle ready. "My name is Suzuki. I'm Japanese. I'm here to find you and take you home." "You're a civilian?" "Yes." "Then you're not my commanding officer." "I cannot surrender to a civilian." They talked for hours. Suzuki showed Onoda photographs of modern Japan, newspapers, magazines, even his passport, showing travel stamps from around the world. Onoda examined everything carefully. Then he said something that revealed the core of his 3-decade ordeal. "I believe you. I believe the war may actually be over, but I cannot surrender unless I receive orders from my commanding officer. That is military protocol." It wasn't about whether the war had ended. It was about obeying the last order he'd received. Hold your position until relieved by your commanding officer. Suzuki returned to Japan and located Major Taniguchi, now a bookseller in his 70s, having long since retired from military service. On March 9th, 1974, Major Taniguchi flew to Lubang Island, accompanied by Japanese officials and international press. They located Onoda at his jungle camp. The lieutenant emerged from the trees wearing the tattered remains of his 1944 uniform, carrying a rifle that was still in working order despite 3 decades of tropical humidity. He saluted. Major Taniguchi returned the salute, then read from a prepared statement. "By order of Imperial General Headquarters, all combat operations are to cease immediately. You are hereby relieved of your duties and ordered to lay down your arms." Onoda's face remained expressionless. Understood, sir. He carefully removed the bullets from his rifle, cleaned the weapon one final time, and handed it to Taniguchi, along with his sword, his dagger, and several hand grenades he'd been carrying for 29 years. Mission complete, sir. The surrender ceremony was broadcast around the world. Images of Onoda, thin, weathered, but standing at rigid attention, became iconic. He was both a hero and an anachronism, a man who'd followed orders to an absurd extreme. The Philippine government wanted to prosecute him for the 30 deaths and numerous injuries caused during his decades of guerrilla warfare. But President Ferdinand Marcos pardoned him, recognizing that Onoda genuinely believed he'd been following legitimate military orders. Onoda returned to Japan as a celebrity. He was interviewed constantly. Publishers offered book deals. He became a symbol of loyalty, dedication, and, depending on who you asked, either noble perseverance or stubborn madness. But he struggled to adapt. Japan in 1974 bore no resemblance to the Japan he left in 1944. The entire society had transformed, from militaristic empire to pacifist democracy, from wartime deprivation to economic prosperity. His parents were elderly. His siblings had families he'd never met. The world had moved on without him. In interviews, Onoda spoke carefully about his experience. "I do not regret following my orders. A soldier must obey. But I understand now that circumstances can change in ways that make old orders obsolete. The challenge is knowing when that has happened." He emigrated to Brazil in 1975, unable to reconcile himself with modern Japan. He married, ran a cattle ranch, and lived quietly until 1984, when he returned to Japan and founded a nature school for young people. His message to students: live according to your principles, but stay connected to reality. I lost that connection and paid a heavy price. Hiroo Onoda died in 2014 at age 91. His obituaries ran in newspapers around the world, remembering the soldier who fought World War II for 29 years after everyone else had gone home. The rifle he surrendered in 1974 is now in a Japanese military museum. Next to it is a placard with his final words to Major Taniguchi on March 9, 1974. "I apologize for taking so long to complete my mission.